Welcome back to the Georgia Show. We're glad to have our audience on all our different streaming channels. Thank you very much for your support, ongoing support. And I have this feeling, Bill, that as we move into this year, the Georgia Show is going to be much more impactful because everything's coming down to Georgia, it seems like. I mean, we're seeing all the dark magic is here. Am I right?
You know, it seems funny. We've said for, I think now a couple of years, there's something about Georgia that's an epicenter for many of the troubling parts of what we've seen in the last 4 years, and that continues to play out, we believe.
It's almost like a petri dish. We're brought to you by the Georgia Record, georgiarecord.com. Please support us there. Support our social media, CDM1, and our no ad subscriptions. This is really important. If you could take some time, buy us a nice, expensive, frou-frou cup of coffee, $10 a month, and $100 a year if you want it. But it really helps support what we're doing across the board with all our reporting all over CDM, from Eastern Europe to Middle East, down to Hotlanta, Georgia. So thank you for supporting us on those. And continue to just spread the word. CDM.press is the new wire service without the global spin. And we're here to just tell the truth. Who do we have today, Bill?
Well, first up, we're going to hear from Garland and Tamara Favorito with Voter GA. We'll get an update from them on the thoughts following the end of our legislative session. We talked with Garland and Ricardo Davis last week about the Curling Raffensperger unbelievable surprise ruling. And so we're going to spend our time on legislative things and perhaps now looking forward based on the comments that came out of the cabinet meeting over the last few days. So we'll spend some time on that. We'll hear a little bit about what others have said about it. Then we're going to move into some stuff that's pretty close to home. There's been drama wrapped around Cobb County, and we're going to refresh for folks how that started, what the moving parts appear to be, and who's involved, and the latest that we're hearing, both from within Georgia and actually one of our next door neighbors. And then we're going to get into some of the things that we need people to have their eyeballs on for now that we're out of the legislative session in general. And that it appears to be that Georgia is making choices, one, that aren't in line with other states that we consider, similarly good states, if you will. And we wonder why. It appears to be wrapped around our legislative body. And we're going to call it out, and we're going to ask some hard questions. Folks are going to be attending these GOP conferences, and some of our elected officials will be there, and they deserve to get questioned on some of these things. And we hope to prime the attendees so that they can do that.
Well, Bill, what I've been really impressed with is the way that the Georgia Record and the Georgia Show is actually able to drill down and focus on what's really important in Georgia and what really people should really see. Because there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of dust, there's a lot of, noise, and we're really trying to pull out, as others say, the signal and what we need to hear from all this noise. So kudos to the team on that. I'm going to run a quick ad from our new sponsor, the Alp Pouch, a new ad, short one they have out, but we'll be right back.
We recommend you take this moment to do what we're about to do, which is enjoy an Alp.
So you can go ahead, Bill.
No, I won't. I won't during the show, but but I thought it was appropriate to show that.
Yeah, exactly. So outpouch.com/CDM, the best nicotine patch out there, and they're not woke. Philip Morris, the parent company of Zyn, is extremely woke. Still to this day, they're pushing the DEI stuff on their website, and we're not at outpouch.com/CDM. All right, Bill, over to you for our first guest.
All right. Garland and Tamara Favorito, thank you for joining us on a Sunday afternoon. We appreciate you being here.
Good to see you, Bill. Thank you.
So I had mentioned as we were coming into the show that we spoke with you last week, Garland, along with Ricardo. We heard about the Curling Raffensperger case and its surprise, I'll call it surprise ruling. Still, nobody can believe that one, but I bet there's more coming, and especially now. So we wanted to hear, I know you guys were down there. I saw you myself on several occasions during the legislative session. You guys worked very hard trying to advocate for good, actual positive legislative steps to improve our voting systems. And I wanted to hear both the outcome, good and bad, and then hear some of your thoughts in terms of a go forward. So please, let me turn it over to you guys.
Okay, well, there's good news and there's bad news. So I'll start with the good news first. There were 2 bills and a budget item that we think are positive. One is HB 233, which all during the session it was known as HB 113, but it got moved into 233 right on the last day. And that is prohibiting the state from purchasing goods or services, including computers, printers, and cables, from a scrutinized company, which means a company from a foreign country of concern that's listed on the Department of Commerce. So if a company is owned or operated by a foreign country of concern, then they are prohibited from submitting a contract. This started out as a much, much stronger bill. In fact, it would have prohibited the state from entering into another contract with Dominion, because Dominion bought component parts from China for its computer system, but right at the last minute, component parts were scratched out. So, but it's still good that it puts a stop. Wait a minute, foreign countries of concern, we're not going to be buying goods and services from them. So we think that's a win.
And that was 233?
HB 233.
Okay.
Yeah. And then second, I think is one of Garland's favorites, which is SB 244. And I guess we could call this the Fani Willis accountability bill. This allows defendants who have been in a lawsuit where the prosecutor has been disqualified and the case has been dismissed, then those defendants can file a motion to recover their court cost and attorney's fees from the county in which they were sued. So obviously this goes right after Fulton County and Fani Willis. She has been disqualified, although it's on appeal. And we would now need the case to be dismissed. So both of those things have to happen, and then they can recover attorney's fees. Garland went down and testified in support of this. It was Brandon Beach's bill. He worked really, really hard on it. And there was a lot of emotion. The Democrats did not like this bill and got extremely emotional about it. And Brandon handed it right back to him in committee meetings. In fact, they're worth looking up those committee meetings and seeing the fireworks. But in the end, it did pass. Do you have any comment on that one? I know you were much more involved than I was.
Well, no, I think it's just as you said. I testified that the case you didn't have to worry about the case being dismissed if there was prosecutorial misconduct against the defendants and the prosecutors removed. Whether or not the case was dismissed should be immaterial, because, as y'all know, Fulton County judicial system is about as corrupt as it could possibly be. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was very interesting. The Democrats made all sorts of maneuvers to keep that bill from passing through committee. It passed 55-0 in the Senate. The 55-0, it comes over to the House, and we had several of the Democrat representatives, including my own, Esther Panich, walked out to prevent a quorum from approving that and sending it on to the House floor. But bottom line is it did get done. And I think that's probably the best bill that got passed in this session.
And, you know, Bill, you mentioned earlier, you're wanting to get the word out so people know how they can get involved. And we asked for an email and call campaign into the House, the chairperson of the House Judiciary Non-Civil Committee, House leadership to get a vote in committee and get it to the House floor. 3,400 people responded to that.
3,400.
3,400 responded and either sent an email or put a phone call in to House leadership. So they were well aware that the people wanted that bill to be voted on.
That's a story in and of itself, that that many people were able to be reached, were incented to take action, and indeed took action. That's amazing. Well done.
Yeah.
That's our Voter GA network. We got
That's
some
right.
fantastic volunteers.
You bet. So let me go back to one question. You mentioned that under 244, they would still have to something would have to cause the case to be dismissed. Was that originally in that bill and they took it out, or was the dismissal never called for in the bill?
It was originally in the bill. They took it out, then they put it back in, and ultimately decision will now come down with an admin law judge will determine the attorney's fees. But yeah, it flipped back and forth, Bill.
It's funny. We heard a lot of that in those last few days. You know, bills being in their entirety or very close, and in some cases being flipped from one bill to another. It seemed to almost be. It reminded me of the old shell game that you see played on the streets of New York. You know, here, bet your dollar on which place the ball is going to end up under which shell, and they kept moving stuff around for reasons that seemed surprising.
Yes, as a matter of fact, and I didn't mention it, I should mention HB 233 was actually a bill, and still is, it's in the bill, to make Brunswick stew the official stew of the state of Georgia, cornbread the official bread of the state of Georgia, and to make the fourth Friday of November the National Sugarcane Syrup Day.
Oh,
For Georgia.
wow.
For Georgia, yeah. And
Well, hard-hitting questions all.
yes, yes. My question is, why are we spending time on stuff like this? And then all of a sudden on Sine Die, that whole section about foreign countries of concern shows up in there. So it makes no sense as to why, but it did make it quite hard to find. If you weren't listening that night, you wouldn't know where it ended up. So
Yeah, and then on the bad side, when they played the shell game, I know y'all want to get to the House Bill 397, we lost the P altogether. All we had is the shell.
That's okay. You know, I've been in that boat. I've been in a room when I was the only one testifying against a bill and everybody else was for it. It's kind of an unusual feeling. You know, it's kind of like being a lamb circled by wolves. You know, it's one of those.
Well, in this case, everybody was for. Everybody worked hard on the Senate, and the House had agreement on some election integrity provisions. The governor's people were agreed. The people were testifying for it. And then suddenly on Sine Die, the governor's office suddenly raised an objection, a bunch of objections. And then the
never came to
House wanted to renegotiate the whole bill at the last minute, and the Senate just decided to shut down. They weren't going to deal with that.
So you're talking about HB 397.
397, yeah.
Yeah. That was an omnibus bill that had a lot of good provisions in it around election security and transparency. And we ended up not getting any of it. Probably one of the most disappointing in there was the state election board, making it independent of the Secretary of State. But the good news is that separate from that bill, the budget included doubling the state election board's budget for this coming fiscal year. And that will give them the ability to hire more investigators and hire an attorney so they can operate more independently from the Secretary of State.
So I have a question about the contents of 397. Would this have mandated or enabled us to leave Eric?
Yes, that was the intent. Yes.
Yeah. Now, would it also have called for the things that people have been asking for, and that President Trump has reflected recently, hand marked ballots, hand counting, and so forth? Was that in there, or was that not included?
That was actually in another bill, SB 214. So that would have gone to hand marked paper ballots using the existing system as far as the scanners, tabulators, and the Dominion services, servers, at least through 2028, which is where the contract for Dominion ends. But that just couldn't make it through.
And Bill, what was interesting about that one is that would have basically resolved the Curling case, the ridiculous, what we call intellectually dishonest ruling of the Curling case, that by giving us hand-marked paper ballots, it didn't have hand counting, but it was a step in the right direction. They worked really hard on that. Max Burns did, got it together. What's interesting about that one, Bill, is that it had bipartisan support. It had the Democrats, the minority leader for the Senate, Kim Jackson, was in favor of it. Jason Estevez, who was on the committee, was in favor of a version of that, which simply would have made the ballot on demand provision optional. The bill included ballot on demand for early voting, and that got Gabrielle support for it, Gabrielle being the election officials. Their concern was they didn't want to have a lot of pre-printed paper hanging around and possibly make a human mistake in giving the people the wrong ballot. So they were actually fairly supportive of the bill. So we had everybody, Democrats, Republicans, we had the election officials, we had the president's executive order that was in favor of eliminating the QR codes on the ballots. So we were, and on top of all that, if you had just simply unplugged the ballot marking devices and plug in ballot on demand in only the early voting locations, that would have cost $2 to $4 million, probably about 4, maybe 5 at the most. And if you remember, Brad Raffensperger was asking for $66 million just to get the machines to be compliant with Georgia law. Then he said, don't comply with it. Just give me $15 million so I can upgrade the system. It's going to solve all the security problems, which we all know it doesn't. Dr. Haldeman's reports and many others have said that. So, and he would have destroyed the forensic evidence that's on the systems right now. So that is, unfortunately, we didn't get that done, and that was a disappointment. We did get a late start. In fairness, we didn't get that bill across from Senate to House in time for a crossover. It came over later, but they could have, pulled their tricks and gotten that thing.
It seems like when there's something they wish to pass, they find a way, doesn't it?
Bingo.
Yes,
Yeah.
You're exactly right. And here they had an opportunity, Georgia had an opportunity to really look good in light of the executive order that the president had issued on March 26, which required getting rid of the QR code, but they chose not to go down that path.
I have one more question, maybe two, on 397, because many people are speaking of it as if it was the panacea. Who wrote it? Who got the content into it? Do you know?
It was Tim Fleming's bill originally on the House side, and then they kept adding language to it on the Senate side. I know that Max Burns was really involved in that. Sam Watson as the chair, and the Georgia GOP. I have to give a shout out to Brad Carver. He and I actually worked really hard on that bill. So I think there were a lot of hands in it because it did cover so many different areas.
Yeah, the history of that bill is it came over from the House with the Eric Ban on it. The Senate added a lot of things to support the state election board, and there's probably some more things that I'm not thinking of at the moment. But most of the strength of the bill outside of the ban of Eric came from the Senate, and they had negotiated an agreement, and that the House was going to accept the Senate changes, and Tim was going to carry the bill. We think that he might consider running for Secretary of State, where that made him look really good. But somehow the governor's office stepped in at the last minute and basically stripped most of the good provisions out of that bill.
It really was a top-down decision, and on sine die, legislators were just going to us, we don't know what happened. So I think it was really right at the top, right at the last minute.
And that's even the House chairman
Mhm.
was that.
Yeah.
So they did this at the rules level.
Yeah. Well, you know, so many things, as we said, you know, if something they want to pass, the pesticide bill is an example, which we're going to talk about later in the show. Magically, it passes with unanimous support. They want to pass a bill about, you know, memes and putting people in prison for 2 to 5 years if they post a meme they don't like. That passes almost unanimously. But this seems to get stuck in spite of everything that we heard from President Trump. It, you know, can't, in my mind, you can't ignore it. I know you guys just worked exorbitantly to try to make sure every provision from every bill passed. One of the things that I want to make sure people understand, you know, these things don't stay in stasis, do they? They just because it was close this year doesn't mean that it'll necessarily even be back in that form next year. Is that right?
Well, because it is a 2-year session, and this is the first year of the session, theoretically, all these bills are available to put back in play next year. But I think you're right. I mean, things have a way of changing. But I do think things are different now that we've got an executive order from the president, which he has the authority to do for federal elections.
Mhm.
And he has said, when he did the press conference for that March 25th election integrity executive order, there would be more to come.
I was going to ask you guys. I mean, we've run up kind of against some brick walls in Georgia, but the president's involved now. Are you going to what's your strategy going forward? I mean, how are you going to? What's your? Are you going to change the way you operate, or keep plugging, or what are you going to do?
Yeah, you're very intuitive, Tom. So that's a good. The good news is that, as Tim was saying, the president's executive order really would accomplish what we're trying to accomplish here in Georgia and failed to do, and we think that's going to happen. So we're really excited about his executive order. We're doing a lot of work, have been doing really since Inauguration Day regarding executive orders, and we're really excited about this one for several reasons. It's incredibly strategic in the way he did this, and the two things that we think are very fascinating are he's asked for a DOJ review of the voter rolls. We know that where that's going to end up. We know that there's nationwide a 20% corruption rate in the voter rolls.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's asked for a review of the assessment of the security of the voting systems. And we believe that once those are conducted, we'll have more executive orders, one to deal with voter rolls, one for the voting systems, and we'll see what's in there. But as Tulsi Gabbard mentioned this past week, we have a national security crisis in the voting system area that's going to have to be dealt with either by the United States Congress or the president or both in the next few months, because she has now mentioned about some of the evidence that we've been aware of from some time in regards to the corruption of the voting systems. We suspect that will lead back, at least in part, to Dominion and Smartmatic, but probably other things as well.
Your timing, as usual, is perfect, Garland. I actually have Ms. Gabbard's quote that I would like to play, and then I've got a little something we found. I'll call it a gift for you following Curling Raffensperger. So let's see Tulsi Gabbard's comments first.
The very dangerous and negative consequences of that. I've got a long list of things that we're investigating. We have the best of the best going after this. Election integrity being one of them. We have evidence of how these electronic voting systems have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time, and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of the votes being cast, which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our elections.
What a fascinating quote. And you could feel the equivalent of a tsunami go across Georgia. You could see it in the Signal chats. You could see it in X as people said, holy mackerel, we're finally getting there. We're finally
But I
getting
noticed-
acknowledgement of this problem.
I noticed she said, well, we think there might be vulnerability. She didn't say like there's plenty of evidence. So is that just, again, just optics or a first shot across the bow? What is that?
Exactly. I think it's first shot at optics, first shot across the bow. It isn't going to give her hand away. We think they've got a lot of evidence. I mean, we've been briefed on some of the evidence that they've got. And a lot of it has to do, with that Gary Bergsten video. There's you've probably seen that 60-minute clip. We think that's a significant part of it. I'm sure she has much more. So we're pretty excited about that because that really, if that's true, and I'm sure it is, we have a national security crisis with the voting systems.
There's people in our
And-
machines. Bottom line, foreign governments, whatever.
Right.
Well, and some people have forgotten that on the 19th of January, just the day before the 2021 inauguration, DNI Ratcliffe actually admitted that there was evidence of foreign interference in the 2020 election that would have, and many people say did, trigger 13848, an EO, an executive order mandating certain things to happen should there be evidence and proof of foreign interference, and he confirmed it. So throughout the last 4 years, and that one's one of the big EOs that's been extended for reasons that many can't explain. We've been under a national emergency, potentially, I'll say, for these last 4 years. So it's very interesting to see what may play out now.
Yeah, and if that's the executive order I'm recalling, I think that was Trump's order, and that was extended every single year by the Biden administration.
Well, it appeared to be extended by someone. Was it Biden or someone else? We don't know.
Yeah,
But it is, and I have copies of each extension. You're right.
I did say Biden administration.
That's right. So we ran across something that I wanted to share because you guys were going to be here, and I know you work so long and hard on the curling Raffensperger. Now, I will give a disclaimer here because of some of our legislators who jealously wanted to pass this meme bill. We do think this might be and probably is AI, but here's Brad Raffensperger standing next to what we think is a voting system with a ballpoint pen. Huh. Not quite sure what the message is, but
yeah.
thought it would be fun.
Oh, that's cute. Yeah. Well, of course, we were there the day that Dr. Haldeman hacked the voting system in front of the court with the ballpoint pen of Secretary Raffensperger's attorney.
Well, maybe he borrowed that pen from his attorney. We don't know.
Well,
All right. Well, thank you. And for any last messages or anything else that we didn't talk about that you'd like to get out?
I think, yes, we're very disappointed with how the legislative session turned out, but I think President Trump is coming through for us. I don't think he's going to sit on any of this information that comes out of the investigation. I think we've finally got somebody in office who is going to make things happen and has the authority to do so under the Emergencies Act. So I think we're in better shape than we've been in years.
Yeah, and it's very exciting because he was all about election integrity, even though he won his election. Because he, usually whoever wins doesn't want anything to do with election integrity, but because he was cheated before, this puts us in a unique position we've never been in before.
Well, if he doesn't fix it, Congress is going to go bye-bye and in a year. So
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
And if you've been involved in this for 3 or 4 years, you can still see the signs of something not right when you can see Trump win a county up in Pennsylvania by 20 points, and then the Democrat wins a month later by 17 points the opposite direction. 37 point swing, I doubt it.
yeah.
So, all right, thank you again for being here. We will look forward to hearing more from you soon.
Thanks, guys.
And thank you, if we haven't said thanks already, for all the work that you've done to
Right,
get us here.
Thank you, Bill. Todd, it's good to be with you.
Take care.
So, Bill, back in the day when I was starting my Wall Street career, one of the old wise men said, you want to get a financial advisor that's been through multiple bear markets, because you just don't know how to deal with one unless you've seen it. And we're up against some pretty tough times here, volatility wise, in the markets, and it could get worse. Our resident financial advisor is David Cross. If you're out there and you need someone to chat with, give David a call at US Asset Management. Let's run his ad, please.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At US Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. US Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
So let's jump right into the next segment, please.
All right. So we have reported now for going on, I guess, 2 weeks, maybe 2.5, about concerns revolving around the Cobb County GOP elections, some of the candidates, some of the background of some of the candidates, and the dynamic that's played out ever since. It's been very unusual, and lots of people have expressed concern over what's been going on. I'm going to pull up a couple stories that we've reported on the Georgia Record, and I want to make sure people have seen these. If you haven't seen them and you want to go into depth, please go to the Georgia Record, georgiarecord.com, and you'll be able to look these two up just by looking for the word Cobb. The first one talks about what looks like just an immense pushback on one of the candidates that for 2 years has been a very active and well-liked part of the Cobb GOP, Ms. Sophia Farouk. And just prior to the convention and the election of the Cobb County GOP Executive Committee, all of a sudden we started seeing all this report about, she could be involved in, terrorist activities and other things and tied to terrorists. And it just didn't make sense in light of what had been done and what she had done within Cobb for previous years. And the other thing was, gosh, this is an awful big pushback for a volunteer executive committee, in Cobb County. It just seemed out of kilter, almost like an international pushback on one tiny little thing. So the day of the election, there were concerns about, were people taken off delegate lists? Was some of this somehow created artificially? Who were the candidates? One of the concerns was that the new chairman candidate had never been a part of the GOP prior to just a few days prior to the convention. And in fact, she had to, with her family, had to sit in the guest section because she had not been chosen as a delegate. Couldn't be because she wasn't part of the GOP and didn't attend the precinct convention the month before. All of it seemed odd. Then in the following days, if you look at the top article, members of the precinct leaders from Cobb County stood up and issued a challenge about the elections, saying that they had learned and others had learned that this person, her name is Mary Clarice Hathaway, wasn't actually a resident of Georgia. In fact, they had documents that they put forth, and we're relying on their reporting at the moment, that they put forth that showed that she had filed for and gotten tax exemption for a home in South Carolina. And that step would have triggered her inability to even be an elector in Georgia, because when Georgia law says, we understand that if you make moves and appear to be, and then do things that show that you're living somewhere else, you can't also be an elector in Georgia. It shows that you've moved. So ever since then, there's been go back and forth with, who lives where, what's happening. And just in the last 48 hours, we received some feedback that there may in fact be investigations going on both in South Carolina and in Georgia revolving around this. Georgia, I suppose, would be related to election and election steps. Up in South Carolina, it would appear to be centered around applying for a tax status that is now maybe in question. And then finally, you can see from the title of that last article published on the 8th, there appears to have now been steps by the same person to change their South Carolina tax status. We're awaiting documentation to show that, but again, we're reporting what we are hearing from folks that we talk to regularly and have found to be credible, both here in Georgia and elsewhere. And so we're bringing this forward because obviously there's some sort of a problem. In addition, on top of this, there's been strange stuff revolving around Cobb that we'll go into after we cover this, and has roped in now Senator Colton Moore. So we're going to table that for a couple of minutes, and let's talk about this problem and how people can learn more. It seems that it shouldn't be that big an issue, right? You should be able to dig down and get the facts on this and who's doing what and who did what, and was the election conducted properly, or was there some flaw in it? And in fact, should it be changed? Should it be changed via rules or some other mechanism? And so, interestingly enough, there has been a website created and stood up to bring, kind of in a more simple way, using sort of a, believe it or not, a Dr. Seuss approach, kind of, to the people of Cobb and people actually around the country that are now paying attention to this. It is found at a website called cobbprob.com, COBBPROB.com. And again, it's kind of based around a sort of a Dr. Seussy feeling. But what it does is, within a very few screens, kind of crystallize the problem. We're not going to go through all of it, but I am recommending that people do indeed pay attention to this and learn what they need to learn, especially people from Cobb and especially people involved in other counties where there may be, some sort of interesting drama going on with their local, either GOP or other organizations. Because it does now seem, based on reports that we are receiving, that there's something underlying that. When you choose this website, you'll be able to go in, and there's actually, they separate the pieces into stories, I'll call them, and I believe they refer to them as well. And they go through what started this, what happened next. Some of the people are called out, not by their own name, but by, acronyms and other things that will tell you who they are, I guess. And then also the feeling of this, as reported by the people that have put it together, is a feeling that, there's this ruling class, oligarchy, perhaps is a word to use. I've heard others refer to it as the elites. And in other words, keeping real grassroots folks that don't have a background, that aren't necessarily professional politicians, keeping their views, keeping their opinions, keeping their involvement out of some of these things going on, such as we had reported regarding these odd elections in Cobb County.
And Bill, let me just interject there. This is very similar to issues in communist China, in Russia, where you have an oligarchy, essentially, no matter the political system, that run everything. And then you have the lower, classes on down the ranks, and people can be like 1 degree of separation away or 2 or 3, but they're still following the agenda of the king or the czar, if you will.
That's true. And
anyway,
often when you
like
dig, and often in those cases, when you dig down under the covers, what do you find? You find the same names or very similar groups of names again and again and again. And that's what we're having reported here in Cobb and actually elsewhere across the state as we go through the convention cycles and the other things that'll be going on over the next couple of months. So there is something that appears to be underneath this. There's even indications that there may be people involved in some of these things including the undermining of grassroots candidates that are actually working from elsewhere outside Georgia, and in some cases across the country for reasons we can't really explain. And they maintain their anonymity, but they seem to have great propensity to act as if they're local and concerned, and really want to protect Georgia. Yet that's one of the tricks that's often used to get people to pay attention. It's we're here to protect you, good Georgians of the state, and yet there's this unmistakable, what the heck is going on that's causing so much drama.
That reminded me of something else when I was up in Batcave, North Carolina, doing some reporting on the mining companies coming in afterwards, after the big storm and all the problems, and they were clearing land for people, but they weren't clearing at their homes where they needed it. They were clearing up among the drainages where they could see all the minerals, and the people were like, I have problems down here, and they're like, we're here to help, shut up, essentially. Yeah. So same kind of thing.
If I recall correctly, too, there were some of them that appeared to be putting up new land marker flags, because many of the pins, commonly referred to mark people's the borders of their property, had been washed away in the flood, and yet they seemed to be replacing them in ways that were not where they originally were. That seemed concerning. And then I remember some talk of flags, apparently corporate flags in some cases,
yes,
being put up in either in towns or nearby for reasons that weren't clear. And it was almost like, gosh, is somebody staking out property on the property I used to own, and is now doing something to attempt to infringe on my property? That was voiced by quite a number, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, it's essentially it's fascism. I mean, it's government and corporate combination going against the people. But go ahead, back to you.
So one more time, I'd like to suggest that folks take a look at this. It's not going to be difficult to understand. It brings the issues here into specific relief, so that just about anybody, even if they don't have a background in Cobb or politics or anything else, they can kind of understand what's been the dynamic here and what are the concerns, and are they real concerns? And if so, where else should I look for information? There's more pages that we can than we can show, but as an example, there's been folks that have alluded to threats and other things. Yet when we try to find out, well, have the police been alerted and are they investigating? There don't seem to be some of those dynamics the way we would expect. There are other publications being called in. Notably, we didn't get a call. We could kind of find that interesting, since we talked to so many people across Georgia and, in fact, across the country. So we're not sure what's underneath this, but it's one of those cases where, we've talked about it like, the Wizard of Oz's curtain. We've talked about it like something going on under the covers. There's something that seems to be here that doesn't seem quite right. And I won't make a Dr. Seuss rhyme out of it, but we would recommend people get their eyes on this at cobbprob.com and learn more. I think the time will be well worth it. So we'll have more reporting on that as we learn more. We'll probably have an article or two in the Georgia Record this week, so people can in fact learn more and gain the benefit of what we're seeing.
Excellent. Great, Bill.
Shall we take one more break?
Yeah, let's do that. Actually, I'll bring up another ad. 1 second. Our new sponsor is Alp, and this is one of their recent ads.
I'll give you a plug for Alp right now. So if you talk about one of the worst companies that's out there,
America's greatest nicotine pouch,
America's lip pillow. But who is your biggest competitor?
That would be the Zyn Corporation.
Zyn. Do you know who owns Zyn?
I do.
So it's Philip Morris International.
Yep.
They are operationally headquartered in Switzerland. On their website to this day, you go on their website today, they have a massive diversity, equity, inclusion piece that is on their website. They have that, and I would say it's I'll call it the worst aspects of DEI, which can be quota systems, race-based systems. And on their website today, they say we're going to hire 20% of our people we want to be Asian. Literally on their website, just 20%. They want 40% women. I mean, literally quota systems they have on their website today. But the other piece is that on their website, and this is a company that makes Marlboro cigarettes and Zyn and other things, is so they're like one of their big partners for Pride Month that's coming up is the Stonewall Org. And Stonewall Org is one of these LGBTQ plus organizations, and fine, you can do that, but like they are advocating for biological men to compete against women in sports. But like, this is what's crazy is that like, and I think this is the problem about where we're going is
What does that have to keep that out of my mouth? I mean, this is like a
Back to you, Bill. Check out the Outpouch, outpouch.com/CDM.
That's actually from one of his interviews, but even the ads for Alp are kind of entertaining.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. So in the coming weeks, folks that are part of the GOP and have been decided to become involved in the GOP organization, perhaps seek an office, perhaps attend the conventions, or all of the above. We'll be looking at their leadership and so forth over the coming year, and so those leaders will be chosen largely in the coming few weeks. County leaders have already been chosen. Now they're moving to district and then ultimately to state. Pick state leaders in the first week of June. One of the things that will happen at that is there will be a lot of legislators, we believe, attending these events. We think it's a great opportunity to ask some direct questions. One of those relates to the things that we've been reporting, one of the things we've been reporting for weeks now. And if you go back in the Georgia Record again and just look up pesticide or look up Bayer or look up chemical bills, you'll find our writing and you'll get a very good background on this. But one of the things that you can do is you can judge our performance as a state and our legislature's performance as a group based on what they decide versus what other states are doing. We spotted something that we wanted to share, which relates back to our reporting. And we sounded the alarm as loud and as broad as we could to alert people that, this, we'll call it the pesticide bill, SB 144, we believe is a danger to Georgians, whether they be farmers, whether they be consumers. And we did our very best, as other people did in other states, to stop such bills. They were and still are in a few states in play. One of the things we spotted was this, and I know it's small, but let me basically tell you what it says. This is from What Matters in Georgia, an account on X. Pesticide immunity shield bills. You recall that the purpose of this bill, SB 144, essentially it creates a shield and an inability for someone who's been injured by something not on the warning label. In other words, if they omitted something from the warning label, or if they forgot to put it on, or if a company claims they didn't know about it and it's not on the warning label, you can't sue them for it. So it creates this pretty broad shield for companies like ChemChina and Bayer and others. Bayer is based in Germany. ChemChina is obviously based in China. It's actually associated with their military. And what this reads is one of the most concerning trends we saw this year was an attempt to push a pesticide immunity shield. Think 1986, but for pesticide manufacturers across several states. Thanks to our advocacy, your advocacy, and the work of our partners, Tennessee just stopped this very much the same bill from passing this past week. Iowa, Oklahoma, Montana, Idaho, Mississippi killed the bill, the very similar bill, earlier in their sessions. Missouri, North Dakota, and Florida are still in the fight and holding strong. What happened in Georgia? We passed this thing earlier in the session, and it's waiting signature as we speak.
With abbreviated processes, right?
That's right. It passed very quickly. I don't recall, as we sit here, how many days, but it passed very quickly. And so we're now down to, in Georgia, taking steps to tell the governor, do not sign this. He's got to veto it. Okay, that's piece one. But piece two goes back to a comment that we made with Garland and Tamara Favorito just a few minutes ago. When our legislators wish to get something passed, all of a sudden it passes. And we saw this happen with this bill. We saw it happen with tort reform, which many are now saying may relate to this bill. And the cases that can't be brought, or the cases that might be brought in spite of this. It occurred with SB 9, the bill I referred to earlier, where they would like to, the legislature, in copying similar bills, or very similar bill in California and other states, wants to say, well, if you post something that's AI created and it has any effect or any relationship to elections within 90 days, you can be charged with a crime. You do it twice, you can go to prison for 2 to 5 years. Whatever happened to the First Amendment? And in fact, one of the sponsors of the bill is on record on video from last year. That was the occasion I mentioned I'd been in a room and testified against the bill. And one of the sponsors testified for it, but admitted in that testimony that this could, in fact, abridge and have an effect on First Amendment rights if they weren't careful. And I forgot the exact wording, but they indicated this was very close to breaching. So the question now is, why would our legislators wish to pass such a bill that does nothing to protect consumers in Georgia? It protects chemical companies, and not even Georgia chemical companies. Mainly these companies are international. And then when you consider what happened right after this passed, and they were rushing it. Well, why were they rushing it? A few days later, there is a $2.1 billion verdict right here in Georgia against Bayer for a gentleman that contracted cancer and blamed it on exposure to, in this case, Roundup, one of the chemicals made by Bayer. And this gentleman won his case, $2.1 billion. A few days after that comes a report that, in fact, Bayer is changing some of the chemicals that they use in the Roundup line of products. And you would say, well, great, maybe they're going to more safe stuff. No, it's the exact opposite. They are moving toward using chemicals that are 45 to 200 times more harmful to humans. And then the last shoe,
because it's like the vaccines, they got the liability, or they're trying to put it in place.
They're trying to get liability so they can put whatever the heck they want on these. But get this, and this is the shoe that's just dropping. Bayer is based in Germany. In Germany and the European Union, these chemicals are not allowed that they're planning on using here in the U.S. Why? Because they're potentially so extremely harmful. Why would we allow this in Georgia? And that is the question that I would like to ask folks to have in their mind. And if you see one of your elected officials that voted for this, I'm going to show you who it was. We're going to post this in the Georgia Record this week. If you see somebody that voted for this, go ask them why. And remind them that their name is going to be on this until it's either vetoed or until the end of time, if that's what it takes. So here's the folks from the Senate that voted for it. I know it's small. We will reprint this in the Georgia Record. Unfortunately, what I found is in my county, Forsyth, every one of our elected officials voted for this. And we gave, during one of the meetings held in March, we actually handed out a sheet so folks in the room would know that our elected officials voted for this darn thing. And it's, in my mind, it's inexcusable. Either they can't be this unaware when the rest of us are aware. Here's the two screens of the House that voted for it, and you can see how many people did. And again, we're going to publish this all so you can see for yourself who had your best interest in mind and who had ChemChina and Bayer's best interest in mind, apparently.
And we're going to keep up the media transparency and accountability, because that's really important in this fight for humanity. You know, when I was at the Air Force Academy, my roommate and I, we had a violation in our room doing an inspection, and this colonel said, "I'm taking your cars." And we said, "Well, how long is that for, sir?" And he said, "Till the cows come home." So I think we're going to stay on this one till the cows come home, Bill.
I think that's necessary, but I would like to be in the room and see people asking our elected officials about this because, and I would tell you, I did in one of these meetings back in March, and what I heard was, well, gosh, it's just so busy we don't have time to read them all. This was a 2.5-page bill,
Yeah.
2.5 pages, and then oh gosh, we got to listen to the leaders of that industry. No, you really don't. You need to think. You need to read, and you need to think, and you need to understand who is helped, who is hurt, who is exposed, who is shielded
Mhm.
by these bills, and understand that people they're gonna know it before we're done.
Exactly. Well, what else do we have today, Bill?
Well, let's see. I think you had a very interesting video that you wanted to share, so let me turn that over to you.
Yeah, before we do that, I'm just going to run a quick ad from one of our sponsors, The Wellness Company. If you are looking to protect your family, you can do that with twc.health/CDM with Get the Drugs in the House before the pandemic comes. I'm just going to play this and we'll get to the treat. Just a minute.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our cdm.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. So, Bill, Tucker Carlson interviewed Alex Jones recently, and I found it fascinating. If anyone is out there that hasn't seen it, it's 2 hours long, but it's worth every minute because he really gives you a degree in what's happening with the deep state and the war against humanity. There was a small clip in there though where he talks about what may be coming, and I want to run this and then we can discuss.
Those little puny ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, it's over for us. That's why we're going back to kill that ant.
That's exactly right.
That's it. So I'm just the ant in Bug's life.
You are, but it hasn't worked. And so I want to make a prediction because I just want to be on tape saying this. I'm going to say it again even more clearly this time. And of course, I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. But I do think a lot of the really crazy, bitter, ethnic hate that you see on social media is fake. It's people were saying it, don't mean it. I think it's like, the Klansmen you'd see marching and you're like, there are no Klansmen. And you're like, what? And of course you find out that it's fake. And it's designed to convince people that there's like a lot of roiling ethnic hatred that doesn't really exist. And that's a predicate to
Patriot Front.
Exactly. It's Charlottesville, but that's happening online right now. And I know that it is. And I think that at some point, I pray I'm wrong, but there's going to be an act of violence, ethnic inspired violence, of hate inspired violence, actual hate, like killing people. And I really hope I'm wrong, but I feel like this is real, and that event will be used to shut down free speech. on social
I
media.
100
Because that is the threat. And you saw it with TikTok, like, oh, we need to ban TikTok because China owns it. No, nothing to do with China. It had everything to do with opinions that the people in charge didn't like being expressed there. And it's like, we're just going to, and the Congress went along with it. But if there's an act of violence and innocents are murdered, and I pray that doesn't happen because I hate that above all, but it has happened and I feel like it could happen again. And people say, and a lot of good people will go along with it, just like they went along with the censorship of you and the destruction of your life because they were told like he's bad. He had something to do with murdering children. And then people just shut down. They're like, I don't know. Alex Jones is associated with murdering children. So whatever they do to Alex Jones, like, is fine.
And I can't tell you how many times in front of my family, people walk up and they go, you killed those kids.
Exactly.
And I'll always go, really? I did, huh? And why am I walking around? And then just like, well, you know what you did. But what you said is so important. The last ingredients is the false flag on a big illegal alien demonstration or a black church. Because the Democrats keep saying, Trump's coming to kill the migrants. We got to rise up.
Yeah, or something else like that. But where innocents are murdered by a crazy person, or maybe an actual crazy person used, or whatever, or maybe it just happens organically. Maybe if you stoke enough ethnic division online, it's clearly bad. I mean, there are people who have, views that are, are mad at other ethnicities. I mean, that's real. Okay. But there are also big actors who are not real. They're doing it on purpose.
And we know who they are. I mean,
yes, we do know who they are.
And for strategic reasons.
I don't want to get involved in all that filth, but
let's just say we've seen the documents separately.
100%. And they're stoking this stuff. And maybe it just organically inspires someone to commit murder, a mass murder. And again, I just pray, as someone who hates all violence, to say it again, I pray that's not the case. But
let's just say this. The people they're mainly attacking are the ones financing them. It's the oldest trick in the book.
Yeah.
Hegelian dialectic. And so just be aware of that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. And I just don't. Yeah. And I think and the only reason I bring that up is because I worry about it every day.
I do too, because that's the next big move.
Free speech is the foundation of a free society. Without it, it's not a free society. You're a slave. If you can't say what you think, you're a slave. It's really simple. And we don't have slavery in this country. It's a free country.
And when it happens, I pray it doesn't. That's the next move. So we're predicting this so that there's enough eyes and ears on it and enough people watching so they don't pull it off. Because that's the thing. Everything I used to predict basically came true because the globalists were still in power. They're so disorganized, have so many problems now. A lot of times when we're able to get out ahead of things, you and others and Trump and Joe Rogan, we're able, and Elon's with a huge voice, second only to Trump, we're able to disrupt what they're doing and enough people see through it. So if it does happen, they try to stampede us into blaming whoever it is. Oh, the Crooks guy, he acted alone. Well, this will be some right-wing Trump supporter with a MAGA hat.
100%.
He'll get killed by the SWAT team.
He was inspired by hate online.
I thought that was important to get out, Bill, because I think we really need to make people aware of this because they are losing. And
Nope, did I lose you?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got you.
I was just saying they're losing, and that was important to get out.
I very much agree. There's one dynamic in that they didn't touch on, and that is the role. Very frankly, I think that we're a part of playing, which is independent media that is not beholden to the traditional mainstream media, aristocracy or whatever you want to call it. So we get to say what the truth is, and nobody gets to circumvent that. They've tried as we've reported many times. They've tried to stop what we bring out. They've tried to actually have kinetic damage done to assets associated with CDM. But they can't stop us.
Yes, the big one is just, demeaning, mocking, all of that, and trying to disrupt our financial, advertisers and all that stuff.
Yeah. So that's part of it. Part of it is there's so many people, and I hope most are like us, where we'll bring out the truth at any cost. We'll just do it. There's no other dynamic that can be acceptable. The other is people are learning that they can't trust mainstream media. We and others have shown them the Mockingbird media, the Mockingbird phenomenon, where dozens of television stations will be saying the exact same phrase at the same time, and yet they're competitors. Why would they do that? Why would they have the exact same dialogue on all these stations?
Phraseology, right?
Yeah, just trying to repeat it enough where it has to be true. I've heard it so many times. And then the other thing is we are out in front of most of this. So think back over the last year. We've had several occasions where we could see things beginning to happen. Bird flu was one of the latest ones. And we heard that, the actual gain of function was being done here in Georgia, and we just blasted it out for weeks on end. Talked to Dr. McCullough, talked to his researchers, got the straight story, showed people how it was being done, where it was being done. We rebroadcast his report from, I believe, up in Canada, showing that, hey, these mallard ducks are up here, but nobody's sick and nobody's really worried about it. And what has happened? Made a big deal about one gentleman, unfortunately, passing away in Louisiana, and tried to portray it as the beginning of another pandemic. Yet we kept going back with the facts and the questions. What was this person exposed to? What conditions did he have before becoming infected with H5N1? How was he treated? When was he treated? What were the circumstances? And guess what? In 3 months now, have we heard any more?
It's
As
amazing.
if it evaporated overnight.
There are multiple examples of all of that, from us being early to the awareness going up so things don't happen. And sometimes they try to do it again down the road. They try to recycle and come back. And that's why we have the Bill Quinn Mockingbird Media, where we say the truth over and over and over again, and it comes out.
I've worn out boots kicking the deep state in the butt, So one of the things I would suggest going forward is, when we see this, if we see something shaping up, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it openly, and we request, don't just take our word for it. Look at what we are pointing to. Research it for yourself so that you will find understanding within it. And the other thing is, in talking to people in the run up to the election, one of the things I will share, and it's challenging to think about, but one of the ways they've tried to keep us separated is to make you believe, or make us believe, that other people of other backgrounds, people of other colors, people of other regions, people of other geography and background and socioeconomic status somehow are different and looking to do something bad to you, to me, to anybody. And what you find is, when you ask people, what is it you want? You hear very much the same answers again and again and again and again. People want very similar things. They're not that different. They want safety. They want good education for their kids. They want a decent place to live. They want a decent chance at the American dream. And they want to, be able to enjoy their life with their family and keep their family safe and comfortable. You hear that again and again and again. People were wondering a few months ago, gosh, why don't we have more young people involved in politics? Well, when I went down to cover the Trump rally down at Georgia Tech, was lucky enough to get in conversation with some of these young people, and they were college age, 20s. And I asked, what are you doing here? Why is this attractive to you? And they said, well, gosh, I'm going to live another 80 years. So if things keep going the way they're going, I can't afford a house now. I can hardly afford a car. I can't afford a new car. I can't even move out of my parents' place. What's my life going to be like if we don't get this fixed? That gentleman, pointing to, Trump getting ready to walk out, says he can turn this into something different, something better. I get a bet on that. I want that. So they're really not that different. And they came from all kinds of different backgrounds, folks from out of the country, folks from South America that were here with their families legally, folks from Asian background, Black background, white background, everybody. They all kind of want the same thing.
Agreed. Well, I think that's it for us today. Bill, we'll be back Wednesday night at 7 p.m. unless you've got something else.
Nope. Just once again, a thank you to all those bringing forward information that we use daily to bring out the truth to folks. Thank you for that. Please keep doing it. I have a funny feeling we're heading into a time when that's going to be even more important.
I agree. Thank you. We'll see you Wednesday night at 7. And tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock at the Skiff, I've got Jeffrey Sachs tomorrow. It'll be fantastic, insightful, really interview. So we're up in the game. So
you are getting all the heavy hitters to come talk to you. That's amazing.
and he's coming to me from Turkey. So it's going to be a great interview. So 10 o'clock tomorrow on the Skiff Eastern. We're on the Skiff Monday through Friday, 10 to 12. Check us out. Great way to start your day and get what news you need to be effective in your life. Thank you.
That's great. We'll see you next time.